Jungkook breaks down after Jimin's brother reveals a haunting truth. A tense confrontation unravels secrets, betrayal, and an impossible choice. Rain hammered the rooftop like war drums as the warehouse doors slammed shut behind them. You think you know Jimin? Taehyung's voice sliced through the cold, oil-soaked air like a blade. You only ever knew the version he let you see. Jungkook froze. His breath fogged in the frigid air, chest heaving from the sprint, knuckles bloodied from the fight he barely remembered starting. The smell of rust and gasoline clung to everything, mixing with the metallic tang of fear rising in his throat. Outside, thunder cracked like a whip, but inside, everything was still. Too still. Taehyung stepped forward, his black coat dripping, eyes burning with something that looked too much like grief and too much like rage. You don't deserve to cry for him. The words hit harder than any punch ever had. Jungkook's fists curled, but not from anger. From the helpless, breath-stealing ache unraveling in his chest. I was there when he begged me not to tell you, Taehyung continued, voice lower now. Begged me to protect you from what he'd done. He knew you'd break. I wouldn't have, Jungkook choked, though even he wasn't sure if it was true. I loved him. He trusted me. Taehyung let out a humorless laugh, cold and bitter. He trusted no one. Not even me. Especially not you. The air seemed to tighten, pressing in on Jungkook's lungs. His mind raced, fragments of memories clashing, Jimin's hesitant smiles, the way he always hesitated before answering certain questions, the silences that had stretched just a little too long. The blood on his jacket that one night. The bruises he wouldn't explain. Then why did he stay with me? Jungkook whispered, voice cracking. If I was just another lie? Taehyung's expression faltered, but only for a moment. Because he needed you to believe in the version of him that could be saved. Silence fell like ash. In that moment, Jungkook's knees buckled. He collapsed to the ground, palms slapping the concrete, shoulders shaking as something inside him shattered. He didn't scream. He didn't curse. He just wept silent, soul-deep sobs that echoed louder than any shout. Taehyung didn't move. He just watched him break, jaw tight, eyes glossy but unblinking. You were the only thing good in his world, Taehyung said, finally. That's why I didn't tell you. That's why he lied. Because if you knew the truth, you'd stop loving him, and he couldn't survive that. Jungkook looked up, tear-streaked, eyes hollow. Then tell me what he did. Taehyung knelt beside him, pulled something from his coat, a crumpled photograph, stained, edges burned. He handed it to Jungkook without a word. In the flickering warehouse light, Jungkook stared. It was Jimin, standing next to a man whose face had been scratched out violently in ink. And behind them, a body limp, slumped against a wall, blood pooling at its feet. Jungkook's breath caught. He had seen that wall before. He had been there. The room swayed, the edges of his vision swimming in black. Memories he had buried clawed their way to the surface. The night Jimin came home shaking. The missing hours. The silence. You remember now, don't you? Taehyung's voice was soft. Almost kind. Jungkook dropped the photo. His fingers trembled as he looked at them, red with his own blood, but now he wasn't sure anymore. Was it always his? The question lingered. The weight of it cracked something deeper than bone. He rose slowly, his body moving like it belonged to someone else. What do I do now? He asked, more to himself than anyone. Taehyung stood too, shoulders squared. Now you decide who you're going to be. The boy who loved a lie, or the man who lives with the truth. The warehouse door creaked open behind them, wind howling in. Jungkook didn't move. Not yet. He just stood there, broken, breathless, and no longer certain of anything except this. The version of Jimin he loved was gone. And the version he never knew had just begun to haunt him. The city didn't sleep that night. Neon lights bled into rain-slicked streets as Jungkook walked aimlessly through alleys, blinded by everything he'd just learned and everything he still didn't understand. The photo burned in his back pocket, like it had a pulse of its own. The blood. The scratched-out face. Jimin. A body. He kept hearing Taehyung's voice on loop. The man who lives with the truth. But how could he live with something that didn't even feel real? And yet, it was. He'd seen the blood. He remembered the wall. But what if he didn't want to remember more? Lightning cracked above him, followed by a slow, rolling thunder that seemed to chase him down the narrow corridor between memory and madness. He needed answers. And only one person could give them. He turned sharply at the next intersection and headed toward the last place he ever wanted to go again, the studio where it all began. The keypad blinked red 3 times before Jungkook remembered the code. Jimin's birthday. The door gave way with a click, swinging open into a room thick with dust and ghosts. The scent of old incense, lavender, and something sharp beneath it, burned electronics maybe, filled his lungs. It was exactly as Jimin had left it. The speakers. The wall of Polaroids. The cracked mirror where they'd once laughed about their reflections after too many drinks. Their echoes still clung to the corners of the room, but now they felt hollow. Jungkook stepped inside, locking the door behind him. Then he turned toward the desk. It was neat. Too neat. Jimin had never been neat. A small USB sat in the center, like it was waiting for him. He hesitated. Then plugged it in. The screen flickered, and a single file appeared. If you're seeing this, I'm already dead. Jungkook's pulse roared in his ears. He clicked. The video opened to Jimin's face, tired, eyes swollen like he hadn't slept for days. His usually styled hair was a mess. A faint bruise was visible under his jaw. Jimin stared into the lens for a long time. Then he spoke. I always knew I'd die alone. But I didn't think I'd drag you with me. Jungkook stepped back as if hit. I lied to you, Jimin continued, voice shaking. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. There are people, no, monsters, who don't let you walk away once you're in. And I was in deep. So deep I couldn't breathe anymore. Jimin glanced away, then back. I killed someone. The words knocked the air from Jungkook's lungs. I killed him, Jungkook. Not because I wanted to, but because he was going to kill you. The screen blurred as Jungkook's vision warped with tears. You were supposed to be safe. That was the deal I made. But I broke it. I got greedy. I stayed. I kept loving you when I should have left. A pause. Then Jimin leaned closer, whispering. If Taehyung told you anything, remember this. He only ever tells half the story. The video cut. Static. Nothing else. Jungkook stared at the blank screen, heart hammering, breath caught somewhere between fury and grief. Half the story? What did that mean? He turned, fists clenched, ready to tear the studio apart when a voice spoke from the shadows. You weren't supposed to find that. Jungkook spun. Taehyung stood in the doorway, soaked in rain, eyes unreadable. How long have you been following me? Long enough to know you're still too stupid to walk away. Jungkook lunged. The punch landed hard, sending Taehyung stumbling back. But he didn't retaliate. He just wiped the blood from his lip and smiled. That's better. Now you're starting to act like him. Don't, Jungkook growled. Don't you dare compare me to the man who killed to protect you? Taehyung interrupted. To the man who begged me not to drag you into this, even when they were already watching your every move. You're more like him than you think. Jungkook grabbed him by the collar. What are you not telling me? Taehyung didn't blink. Do you really want to know? Jungkook's grip tightened. Tell me. You were the real target. Silence fell like a knife. What? They only went after Jimin because he got in the way. Because he refused to let you be used. Used how? Taehyung pulled out a phone and tossed it to Jungkook. Play it. Jungkook hesitated, then tapped the screen. It was surveillance footage. A warehouse. Dim lighting. A man tied to a chair. Then Jimin entered the frame. Behind him, Jungkook. He staggered in, dazed, hands bound. His eyes were glassy, unfocused. What is this? You were drugged. You don't remember. That's when it all began. On screen, the man in the chair shouted something. Jimin responded with fury. The video had no audio, but the rage was visible. Then the man lunged. Jimin reacted fast, too fast, and the gun in his hand flashed. The man slumped. Blood sprayed the wall. Jungkook, on camera, collapsed in shock. The video ended. That's the night you started forgetting, Taehyung said. They erased it from your memory. And from there, it got worse. You were their leverage. Jimin made a choice. No, Jungkook whispered. This isn't possible. But it was. Deep down, something in him recognized that night. Like a nightmare half-remembered, clawing at the edges of his sleep. He looked at Taehyung, trembling. Why didn't you tell me this from the start? Because if I told you, you'd go after them. And they'd kill you. Just like they did Jimin. Then let them try. A long silence passed between them. Then Taehyung nodded. I thought you'd say that. The next days blurred into movement, tracking names, revisiting Jimin's old contacts, peeling back layers of the life he never knew existed. Jungkook discovered aliases. Bank accounts. A storage unit filled with forged passports and coded notebooks. It was like uncovering a stranger who wore Jimin's face. Each clue deepened the wound. One entry in a notebook chilled him more than the others. If he ever finds this, Jungkook, I'm sorry. I did it all for you. But I'm afraid when you learn the truth, you'll hate me more than you'll miss me. He didn't hate Jimin. But he did hate himself for not seeing any of it, for being so easy to protect that someone had to die in the process. And then came the phone call. Private number. He answered. I see you've finally woken up, a smooth voice said. He always feared you would. Who is this? Someone who's been waiting for you to remember. Meet me where it all began. Tonight. Come alone. Click. The line went dead. The warehouse again. Only this time, it wasn't empty. A man stepped from the shadows, face half-lit by a hanging bulb. Sharp cheekbones. A jagged scar across his jaw. Do you remember me? He asked. Jungkook stared. No. But also yes. You were there. The night of the killing. The man smiled. I was the one Jimin didn't shoot. Jungkook flinched. He was supposed to kill us both, the man continued. But he hesitated. Because of you. That hesitation cost him everything. What do you want from me? Justice. Jungkook's voice was ice. You want me to kill someone? No, the man said, stepping closer. I want you to become who Jimin died to keep hidden. You're not innocent, Jungkook. Not anymore. And it's time he stopped pretending. Jungkook's fists clenched. The man offered him a flash drive. Everything you need to destroy the people who broke him. But once you see this, you can't go back. Jungkook stared at the drive. It felt like the weight of a world Jimin had carried alone. He took it. And somewhere deep inside, a door slammed shut behind him. Jungkook would never be the same again. But neither would the people who destroyed the one person he ever truly loved. Because now, he remembered, the night was a war zone of memory and neon. Jungkook stood in his apartment staring at the flash drive like it was a cursed object. The lights were off. Only the occasional flicker of distant lightning illuminated his silhouette. His shirt was soaked in sweat despite the chilled air. The past 3 nights had been a descent, a rapid, uncontrolled fall into truths he wasn't ready for but could no longer deny. He hadn't slept. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the man in the chair, the flash of the gun, and Jimin's eyes after the shot wide, shaking, haunted. Now the drive sat between his fingers. Cold. Silent. He inserted it into the laptop. A folder popped open. Mnemosiny. Inside, a series of encrypted files and one video. He clicked the video first. Jimin again, only this time, he looked different. Not broken. Not tired. Calculated. Behind him stood the same wall from the warehouse. This footage was old. Before the killing. Maybe before everything. I don't have much time, Jimin said. His voice was flat. If this gets to you, it means I lost. It means they either found me or I gave myself up. Jungkook leaned in. I didn't lie to hurt you. I lied to keep you breathing. But the truth is bigger than us, Jungkook. It always was. You were born into it. I stepped into it. That's the difference. Jimin's hand reached for something off camera. A folder, thick with documents. Names. Faces. Charts with red thread and pins. Jungkook squinted to read them. One name stood out. Chairman Nam Kwangho. Jimin continued. That's who started it. Your father's former associate. He used to run underworld contracts. But after your father vanished, he changed. More political. More brutal. And more interested in you. Jungkook froze. My father? The screen flickered. You were the legacy he couldn't control. That's why he wanted you erased or remade. Your father protected you by faking your death once, 20 years ago. That's when your real name disappeared. But Kwang-ho found out. And he sent people after you. That man I killed, he was the second attempt. Jungkook stood so suddenly the chair screeched backward. He backed away from the screen as if JIMIN might step through it. My name, he whispered. What was my real name? The video ended without answering. He turned back to the laptop, trembling, and opened the folder of encrypted documents. They required a password. He tried everything. JIMIN's birthday. His own. Nothing. Until he typed 0924JK. Access granted. The files opened like a trapdoor. Documents on Nam Kwang-ho's political campaign. Blackmail ledgers. Surveillance logs. Photos of Jungkook at cafes, in rehearsal rooms, on rooftops, taken without his knowledge. Then he found it. Subject 0, Jeon Minhyuk. Codename, Jungkook. His throat dried. Minhyuk. That was him. He had a different name. A life before this one. The file read like a scientific experiment. Tracked behavior. Monitored responses. Genetic markers. A note at the bottom. Minhyuk shows exceptional emotional resilience. Recommend full assimilation into the MK Ultra variant conditioning program if memory manipulation fails. He dropped the laptop. The screen cracked. He staggered backward into the kitchen, knocked over a glass. It shattered across the tile. His hands ran through his hair as his heart pounded like a siren. Conditioning? Memory manipulation? He wasn't just someone JIMIN loved. He was someone they built. The knock on the door wasn't loud. It was deliberate. He grabbed a knife from the drawer and approached silently. Another knock. Jungkook. Open the door. Taehyung. Not now, Jungkook rasped. I swear to God, if you've been lying to me, open the door. His voice wasn't angry. It was something else. Urgent. Jungkook opened the door, blade hidden behind his back. Taehyung entered fast, eyes scanning the room like he expected snipers. He saw the laptop, the files still open, and cursed under his breath. You weren't supposed to open that yet. You knew, Jungkook said. All of it. My father. The fake name. The program. I didn't want you to break, Taehyung said. JIMIN asked me to protect you from the full story. You think he told me everything? He didn't. He was planning something big before he died. Something even I couldn't stop. Jungkook stepped forward, jaw clenched. What did he do? Taehyung exhaled and pulled a crumpled letter from his coat. He wrote this 2 days before the shooting. Never sent it. I found it in his locker. Jungkook took the paper. The handwriting was unmistakable. If this plan works, Kwang-ho will burn. But I won't make it out. If he ever gets to Jungkook, if the truth ever comes out, tell him this. The blood on my hands was always meant to keep his clean. Jungkook lowered the letter slowly. What plan? Taehyung sat down heavily on the couch. To expose Kwang-ho. To use the footage, the documents, the connections JIMIN found to destroy everything. But he needed one thing, the access codes to the Shadow Archive. What is that? Taehyung looked up, face grim. The archive is Kwang-ho's legacy. Every contract. Every secret. Every body buried for the last 25 years. It's on a remote server only 3 people have ever touched. One of them is you. I don't remember. You were 5. But it's there. Locked in your subconscious. And now they know you're awake. Jungkook didn't want to believe it. But he remembered flashes. A cold room. A man with a snake tattoo. A red folder. Screaming. What do I do? Either you run, Taehyung said, and they eventually catch you. Or you finish what JIMIN started. The meeting place was an abandoned station beneath the city. Forgotten by time, it still stank of old metal and urine. Jungkook stood in the center as the train tracks hummed beneath him. He'd sent out the signal, 3 names who would want Kwang-ho dead. He'd expected at most one to show. All 3 did. Yoongi, the hacker who once worked as Kwang-ho's data ghost before disappearing off the grid. Min-jae, a former journalist, fired for publishing an exposé that never made it past page 2 before her editor was mysteriously transferred. And Bile, silent, sharp, and deadly. No one knew where she came from. But she knew things. That was enough. You're really him, Yoongi said, circling Jungkook. The boy with the fractured memory. The ghost asset. Jungkook didn't flinch. I'm not just a ghost anymore. Minjae leaned forward, eyes gleaming. Then why call us? Because I have the archive, Jungkook said. And I want to burn Kwangho to the ground. They stared. Then Bile stepped forward and handed him a single match. Then light it. Back at the studio, the war room began to take form. Jungkook worked with a focus that bordered on obsession. His eyes burned from sleepless nights, his hands trembled only when no one was watching. Jimin's photo remained on the desk, staring back like a silent oath. One by one, they decrypted the archive. Bank transactions, phone records, blackmail files. Then they found it. Subject, Operation Eunoia. Jungkook's name. A final directive. In case of escape, terminate. Taehyung swore aloud. You're not just a threat to them anymore, he said. You're the last thread that ties it all together. Jungkook stood slowly. His voice was quiet. Then we cut the thread. On our terms. That night, a message was sent to Kwangho's inner circle. You built this empire on lies. I was one of them. And now I remember. See you soon. Jungkook. The countdown had begun. And this time, there would be no more lies. Only fire. You know what the difference is between revenge and justice? The question came from Minjae as she lit her cigarette, the flame briefly illuminating her weathered face in the dark corridor of the war room. Her eyes were fixed on Jungkook, unreadable, challenging. He stared at her, jaw tight, heartbeat pounding behind his ribs like a ticking bomb. One wears a suit and walks into a courtroom. The other carries a blade and doesn't wait for permission, she said, exhaling smoke. So, what are we doing, Minyak? Are we suiting up, or are we cutting throats? Jungkook turned away from her, pressing his fists into the table covered in surveillance photos and decrypted files. The names on those papers had once been just shadows to him. Now they had faces. Faces that smiled in press conferences, held hands with world leaders, laughed in marble-tiled boardrooms while blood dried on their polished floors. Kwangho's empire wasn't a criminal syndicate. It was a civilization built inside another. A cancer beneath the skin of society. He looked up. The silence in the room was dense, heavy with unspoken memories and shared fury. We burn it all, Jungkook said. The others nodded, Minjae with a smirk, Bile with a glance that said she was already a few steps ahead, and Yoongi, who was typing so fast her fingers blurred, eyes lit with the fever of vengeance and truth. Taehyung stood behind Jungkook, arms crossed. You sure about this? He asked, voice low. You cross this line, there's no coming back. The media, the government, even the people you think will thank you, they'll all come for you. Jungkook turned toward him. Then let them. I'd rather be hunted for the truth than live another second as someone's experiment. Yoongi's voice broke through. I just cracked a live node, Kwangho's financial shell company. Do you want to see where the money goes, or who it comes from? Jungkook answered without hesitation. Where it goes. The screen filled with dozens of transactions, millions transferred into shell accounts, disguised under philanthropic organizations and foreign government grants. One file blinked red. Yoongi zoomed in. The destination bank code was familiar. Too familiar. Jungkook's heart stopped. That was the same bank Jimin used for his private withdrawals. Yoongi clicked deeper. The recipient wasn't Jimin. It was Taehyung. The room snapped to stillness. Everyone turned. Taehyung didn't move. You want to explain that? Minjae asked, stepping between him and Jungkook, hand brushing the gun in her coat. Taehyung's mouth was a thin line. His eyes, cold, still, met Jungkook's. I was feeding them false intel, he said. That money was the price for delaying their hits. For giving Jimin time to work. You could have told me, Jungkook said, voice barely a whisper. Taehyung stepped forward. And risk you running headfirst into a war you didn't even remember being part of? I had to make a choice. You always have choices, Jungkook snapped. You just didn't choose me. Silence followed, thick as concrete. Taehyung's jaw clenched. You think Jimin never questioned me? He did. But he also trusted me enough to know the money meant nothing. The results did. Min-jae wasn't convinced. Still smells like betrayal. Sometimes, Taehyung said, you have to wear the villain's face to keep the real ones from winning. Bile, quiet until now, stood. Her voice was ice. We move forward. If he betrays us again, he dies. No one argued. The air was darker now. At 3:44 a.m., Yoongi pulled Jungkook aside. I found something. You're not going to like it. She opened another decrypted fragment of the archive. A private memo, redacted heavily, but not enough. Project Mnemosyne, test subject M, status, corrupted. Attempted to remove emotional bonds. Failed. Memory ghosting inconsistent. Reprogramming advised. Warning, subject demonstrates attachment resistance. Primary trigger, JIMIN. Jungkook stared. They tried to erase me, he whispered. They tried to rebuild you, Yoongi said. And JIMIN was the glitch in the system. Every time they wiped your memories, you found your way back to him. He felt sick. It hadn't just been love. It had been rebellion. Survival. JIMIN hadn't been his weakness. He'd been his anchor. There's more, Yoongi said. She handed him an old photo. Grainy. Time-stained. It was Jungkook as a child. Next to him stood a tall man with eyes too much like his own. Jungkook's father. The same man presumed dead for over 2 decades. Under the photo, a scrawled note. K is alive. He never left. He just became the shadow. Jungkook's vision swam. His father wasn't dead. He was inside the system. Maybe even running it. Where is he? Jungkook asked. Unknown, Yoongi said. But I think that's the last play. Jungkook turned to Taehyung, voice sharp. Did you know? Taehyung didn't hesitate. No. But something in his eyes cracked. And Jungkook saw it. You did. Taehyung didn't deny it this time. He made me promise. Said if you ever remembered, it had to be by your own will. He didn't want to influence you. He thought, if you saw what he became, you'd hate him. Tears welled in Jungkook's eyes. He blinked them back. Where is he now? Geneva, Taehyung said. Running a front called Orpheus International. They advise on global security. But it's just a disguise. Jungkook exhaled slowly. We go to Geneva. Min-jae raised her eyebrows. That's not a small play. That's not just fire. That's a goddamn meteor. I want answers, Jungkook said. And I want to ask them to his face. They landed in Geneva 72 hours later, using stolen credentials, forged diplomatic permits, and backdoors built by Yoongi herself. Orpheus International's building was a black tower of silence in the middle of the city. No signs. No windows on the upper floors. A place built to not be noticed. Jungkook entered alone. The elevator required biometric verification. He pressed his hand to the glass. It turned green. Access granted. He wasn't surprised. On the top floor, the doors opened to a library. Floor-to-ceiling books. No computers. Just quiet, suffocating elegance. A man sat at the far end of the room, sipping tea. He stood when he saw Jungkook. Older now. Gray at the temples. But the same sharp eyes. The same build. His father. You came, the man said. Jungkook didn't answer. The man gestured to a chair. Jungkook sat. There were no cameras. No guards. Just them. I suppose you want to know why I left you. Jungkook's throat tightened. I want to know why you made me into this. His father smiled sadly. I didn't want to. I had to. If they had found you. They did find me, Jungkook snapped. They used me. They rewired my brain. And the whole time, you were here watching. I did worse, his father said. I designed the system that broke you. And I spent the rest of my life trying to destroy it from the inside. Jungkook stood. You could have told me. No, his father said. Because you were stronger without me. Because Jimin. He gave you something I couldn't. They stared at each other for a long time. I never stopped loving you, his father said. But love alone doesn't win wars. Strategy does. Jungkook looked down. Then let's end the war. His father raised an eyebrow. Together. No, Jungkook said. After you confess. After you send the final access key to the world. All of it. His father hesitated. Then nodded. He reached into his coat and slid a black card across the table. The master key. Press play. Let them see. Outside, the sky began to burn orange with morning. Jungkook took the key and turned toward the door. His father's voice stopped him. One day, you'll hate me for how much I loved you. Jungkook didn't look back. I already do. And then he left. Toward the storm. Toward whatever would come next. The master key card felt heavier than metal in Jungkook's pocket as he stepped back into the cold Geneva air. It wasn't the temperature that made his breath tremble, it was the weight of what was coming, what had to come. That card held the files, the testimonies, the recorded assassinations, the embezzlements, the manipulations of elections, media, minds, and memory. Everything his father had built. Everything JIMIN died trying to expose. He didn't speak during the drive back to the safe house. Minjae watched him from the passenger seat, her eyes narrow and unblinking, cigarette untouched between her fingers. Bile drove, silent as ever. Yoongi sat in the back, already on her tablet, running proxy tunnels and hidden servers like her fingers were trying to outrun time itself. Taehyung opened the door when they arrived. His face unreadable, but his posture stiff. He hadn't slept either. No one had. And no one would, not until the truth scorched the world. The safe house was dim. Jungkook walked straight to the central table, took out the key, and placed it in the middle like it was a loaded gun. There it is, he said. Silence. Yoongi set down her device slowly. It's real. Jungkook nodded. It's everything. Minjae blew out a breath. Once this gets out, there's no more going back. No hiding. Not for any of us. Bile added, governments will fall. People will die. You know that, right? Jungkook met each of their eyes. People are already dying. At least now they'll know why. Yoongi picked up the key and connected it to her console. Code spilled across the screen's green, red, blinking warnings. Layers of encryption began to fall. She started mirroring the data across secure relays, backup chains that would release it to thousands of nodes around the world if anything happened to them. This is massive, Yoongi muttered. Files on heads of state, CEOs, intelligence agencies, secret deals, blood contracts, even names of artists used as public distraction vectors. She paused. One file opened with a chilling photograph. JIMIN, in a hotel corridor, face bruised, eye contact with a man behind him. That's the night he was taken, Taehyung said. Before they injected him with the tracking chip. No, Yoongi corrected. That's the night he walked in. Everyone looked at her. What do you mean? Yoongi enlarged the metadata. He wasn't captured. He turned himself in. Jungkook's voice cracked. No, that's impossible. He would never. He did it to protect you, Taehyung said, stepping forward. He gave them everything except the archive. In exchange for your safety. Minji's voice was a whisper. So all of this, the games, the fake betrayals. JIMIN orchestrated it. Not just orchestrated, Yoongi said. He was the fulcrum. Jungkook gritted his teeth. Then why the lies? Why hide the truth from me? Because you were the only piece of the puzzle he couldn't afford to lose control over, Taehyung answered. Because you were the only one he still loved as a person. Not as an asset. Jungkook turned away, fists clenched. He should have trusted me. Minjae walked closer to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. He did. In his way. Just not enough to let you die for him. The files kept uploading. Every name opened another door. Every video another coffin. Yoongi suddenly cursed. We've got an intrusion. Everyone moved. From where? Bile asked, reaching for her weapon. Yoongi typed rapidly. It's not a hack. It's a backdoor already inside the archive. Someone set it to activate once the data was decrypted. Kill it, Taehyung said. I can't. It's not targeting us. It's triggering a failsafe inside Orpheus headquarters. Jungkook paled. What kind of failsafe? Detonation, Yoongi whispered. Silence exploded through the room. Jungkook was already running. Bile shouted, You'll never make it. I have to try, he said, grabbing the bike keys. If my father is still in that building. Yoongi stepped in front of him, eyes wide with realization. That's the point. He wants to die. He's taking himself out with the evidence. No, Jungkook growled. He doesn't get to choose how this ends. The ride across Geneva was a blur of lights and horns. Jungkook leaned into the wind, his vision tunneling into a single target. As the tower rose into view, a distant sound like thunder reached his ears, only this thunder pulsed from beneath the ground. He slammed the brakes as smoke began to curl up from the base of the building. An explosion ripped through the foundation. Glass rained down. The tower groaned like a dying animal. And then, as if in slow motion, the structure began to collapse in on itself, a controlled demolition. He felt his knees in the middle of the street, unable to breathe. Not because of the smoke. Because of the choice his father had made. To bury himself and everything he was with his sins. A siren wailed in the distance. But Jungkook could only hear Jimin's voice in his head. Some things you don't survive. You just make sure someone else does. He returned to the safe house hours later. Black soot on his face. Silence thick in his bones. Yoongi looked up from her screen. The upload completed. Even without the mainframe, the data replicated across 47 mirrors. It's everywhere now. News agencies, whistleblower sites, anonymous forums. It's done. Jungkook nodded slowly. It's begun. Bile handed him a glass of water. Her hand lingered on his for just a second longer than usual. Min-jae turned on the television. Every channel was in chaos. Anchors shouting. Governments issuing panicked statements. Arrests. Protests. Some leaders already missing. They had lit the match. The world was catching fire. And Jungkook felt nothing. Only an ache. That Jimin wasn't here to see it. He stepped outside alone. The stars were smudged by light pollution, but he stared anyway. Taehyung joined him minutes later. I didn't think he'd actually blow himself up, Taehyung said quietly. I did, Jungkook replied. He raised me. Taehyung nodded. You hate him. Jungkook thought about it. No. I think he hated himself enough for the both of us. They stood in silence for a long time. Then Taehyung asked, what now? Jungkook turned toward him, eyes hollow. Now we deal with the fallout. And after that? Jungkook looked up again. The sky was darkening. After that, he said, we find the next monster. Because in the world Jimin died exposing, there were always more monsters. But this time, Jungkook wasn't a puppet. He was the flame. The air in Seoul felt different. Thicker. Charged. Not with celebration, no one outside their circle even knew Jungkook had lit the match that had set half the world's lies on fire, but with a kind of breathless anticipation. Like the city itself knew something massive was shifting under its concrete skin. Jungkook stepped off the plane with no luggage and no words. Just the same weight pressing behind his ribs, heavier than ever. He didn't need sleep. He needed answers. And blood. The fall of Orpheus had ignited a global domino effect, resignations, sudden deaths, leaks multiplying like wildfire. Jungkook had watched it all unfold in silence. He didn't celebrate. He didn't even flinch when the media started using Jimin's name again. Mysterious whistleblower, fallen operative, double agent, or martyr? None of them knew him. None of them deserved to say his name. Taehyung was already waiting outside the terminal, standing against the black car, sunglasses hiding the war behind his eyes. Jungkook didn't speak as he climbed in. Neither did Taehyung. The silence between them had evolved, less hostile now, but no less heavy. They both knew what came next. Bile and Min-jae were already at the new safe house, a loft built into the shell of a former newspaper office, once silenced by the very system they'd just burned down. Now the place crackled with screens, maps, threads connecting names, plans unspoken but understood. Yoongi sat in the center, eyes lit with caffeine and defiance. She looked up when Jungkook entered. They're trying to rebuild. He raised an eyebrow. Who? Yoongi spun her chair toward a screen displaying faces he didn't recognize. Remnants. Ghost cells. Not everyone fell with Kwangho. Some of his former lieutenants are now operating as a decentralized network. They've renamed themselves Astrea. Poetic. Greek goddess of justice. Ironic. Min-jae leaned over the table, her tone razor-sharp. And they're not hiding. They're recruiting. From tech companies, military units, even exiled diplomats. They've seen the chaos the truth caused, and now they want to rewrite the world in their image before we do. Jungkook walked to the screen, studied the faces. Some were familiar. Others new. One in particular froze the blood in his chest. A woman. Mid-30s. Flawless skin. Clinical smile. Yoongi spoke before he could. Her name's Dr. Han Seo-jin. Neuroengineer. Former project lead in one of the Mnemosyne offshoot labs in Zurich. She was one of the people who oversaw your conditioning. Jungkook's jaw clenched. Is she running Astria? Not alone, Yoongi said. But she's a keystone. I've tracked movements suggesting she's back in Seoul under diplomatic protection. She knows you're awake. And she's waiting. Waiting for what? Yoongi hesitated. Then pulled up a side feed footage from a recent underground conference, leaked via an anonymous source. In the video, Han stood on stage, composed and venomous. If you ask me, Mnemosyne wasn't a failure, she said. The asset survived, didn't he? He survived betrayal, grief, memory collapse. He's still operational. And if we reacquire him, imagine what we can build from that foundation. Taehyung stepped forward. She wants you back. Min-jae laughed dryly. More like she wants to dissect him. Jungkook stared at the screen until it blurred. He could feel the scar beneath his shirt, just over his spine, the injection point. Where it all began. I want her, he said, voice low. Alive. Talking. Screaming if I have to. Yoongi nodded. She's due at an off-the-books symposium tomorrow. Intel suggests she's meeting with financiers from Russia and Brazil, people who lost billions when Orpheus collapsed. Bile added, the building is protected by embassy-level security. Facial scanners, heat mapping, and private guards trained to kill first and scrub everything later. Jungkook cracked his neck. Good. Let's see if they remember me. The next day, Seoul wore its mask well, clean streets, efficient subways, bright skies. But underneath it, power was shifting like tectonic plates. The symposium was hosted in an art museum front, the Taehyung Modern. On the surface, a cultural summit. In reality, a den of remaining wolves, licking wounds and preparing for war. Bile posed as Jungkook's point in surveillance, already perched across the street with a long-lens camera and sniper gear just in case things went south. Yoongi handled the signal jammers, neutralizing their biometric scans for precisely 6 minutes. Min-jae worked the crowd as an attendee, keeping eyes on Han. Taehyung was the wild card. His contacts had bought them the security breach window. Jungkook wore a tailored black suit, his face neutral but burning underneath. As he approached the museum entrance, a guard raised a hand. Credentials? Jungkook held up a small device Yoongi had programmed, a temporary ID matching a silent investor from Indonesia. It worked. He walked in. The walls were lined with abstract art, blood reds, oppressive blacks, unblinking eyes. All too fitting. Soft piano music played beneath the murmur of international tongues, expensive perfume, and ambition. And there she was. Han Seo-jin. Elegant. Untouchable. Surrounded by men in polished suits. He moved in. Min-jae whispered into his earpiece. You've got 30 seconds before the facial system reboots. Make it count. Jungkook stepped into Han's line of sight. She looked up. Their eyes met. And she smiled. She said, voice calm and chilling. So the prototype does come when called. He didn't blink. Did you know JIMIN died with your name in his blood? She tilted her head. JIMIN was brilliant. Misguided. Emotional. He thought love could overwrite programming. That's always the flaw. He moved closer. She didn't back away. You created a monster, he said. She leaned in. No. I liberated one. And now we could do it again, perfectly this time. Jungkook snapped. His fist collided with her jaw. Not enough to break it, but enough to silence the room. Guards moved. Too slow. Bile's shot took out the first one. Min-jae disarmed the second with a flick of her wrist and a concealed blade. Chaos erupted. Screams. Sirens. Jungkook grabbed Han by the wrist and dragged her through the service corridor. She fought, but he was stronger. This time, she wasn't the scientist with control. He threw her into a van. Taehyung gunned the engine. They drove in silence until they reached the interrogation site, an old theater gutted after a fire, still smelling of ash and mildew. Jungkook tossed her into a chair. Bile locked the door. Minjae stood by with duct tape and gauze. Yoongi monitored from a laptop. Han didn't scream. She laughed. This is where you think you win? In some damp theater, with your trauma and your trigger finger. Jungkook stepped closer. You once said I was still operational. Then you're about to find out what that looks like. He grabbed a folder from Yoongi and dropped it in front of her. Photos of test subjects. Children. Dead. She looked at them. Blinked. Showed nothing. Minjae spoke. Tell us about Project Alethea. It's not in the archive. Han's smile faltered. So Yoongi repeated the name louder. Alethea. Han hesitated. Then, her voice soft. It was the next phase. Of what? Mnemosyne worked. But it didn't control. It resisted. So we designed Alethea to replace free will entirely. No more ghosts in the system. Just compliance. Taehyung moved beside Jungkook. And where is it now? Han didn't answer. So Jungkook grabbed her face and leaned in close. Don't make me become what you built. Finally, she cracked. They moved the research offshore. Vladivostok. A lab under the name Tech. Funded by Astria's inner circle. It's more than a lab, it's a factory. They're making soldiers. Jungkook's stomach turned. And the prototypes? Already fielded, she whispered. They're being tested in unreported conflicts. Entire villages disappear overnight. Jungkook stepped back. Taehyung exhaled. Bile whispered, what the hell have they done? Jungkook looked at Han. Her bloodied lip. Her still calm eyes. You're going to live, he told her. Long enough to watch it all come down. Han laughed. Then you'd better hurry. Because Alethea doesn't wait for anyone. Not even its father. That night, as Seoul burned quietly beneath the surface, Jungkook stood alone on the theater's rooftop. The stars were clearer here. But the world had never been darker. And somewhere far to the east, in a lab beneath Russian soil, another version of him was already waking up. Only this time, there might be no JIMIN left to stop it. Rain poured like bullets over Vladivostok. The city's edge, where the frozen sea met concrete industrial silence, felt like the end of the world. Jungkook stood beneath a flickering neon sign in a no-name alley, watching the condensation from his breath vanish into the night. His gloved hands gripped the photo Bile had found grainy surveillance, time-stamped 3 days ago. A boy. 15. Eyes vacant. A patch on his neck. Another him. No name, no records, just prototype 08. His stomach twisted. That's what he would have been, had JIMIN not stolen him away from the system. Yoongi's voice crackled through the comms. The lab's under the harbor. Abandoned storage complex registered to a shell company owned by one of Kwangho's old silent partners. Astria moved fast. They've militarized the facility. And Jungkook, there are kids in there. How many? He asked. Hard to say. At least 12. Some under 10. They've already started phase 2 of the program. Cognitive suppression through audio-visual loops, neurochemical therapy, electro-conditioning. Jungkook felt bile rise in his throat. Are they awake? They're awake, Yoongi said. But not present. They don't speak. They don't even blink unless triggered. Minjae cut in, her tone sharp. It's worse than we thought. They're not just building weapons. They're using what they learned from you to erase the soul. Bile added softly, we have to destroy it. Jungkook said nothing. The rain soaked through his collar, but he didn't feel it. He only felt the weight of JIMIN's name crawling up his spine again, like a wound whispering its own blood. Taehyung stepped beside him, dressed in black, pistol holstered beneath his coat. You sure you're ready for this? No, Jungkook muttered. But those kids don't have time for me to be ready. The team moved like phantoms. No words. Just breath and steps and the hum of the storm. Inside the harbor complex, they passed rusted cranes and salt-eaten storage tanks. The outer walls were patched with mismatched steel panels, surveillance drones hovering like mosquitoes above floodlights. Yoongi guided them through blind spots. Bile neutralized 2 guards before they even hit the ground. Minjae set an EMP charge to scramble the internal communications. The entrance to the underground lab was disguised beneath a hydraulic cargo lift. Yoongi cracked the code. The steel gate opened with a hiss and the scent of bleach and metal and something faintly rotting. They descended into hell. The first level was cold, too cold. Fluorescent lights flickered above sterile hallways. On one side, observation rooms filled with monitors. On the other, cell doors, locked tight. Jungkook moved fast, checking each room. The third one shattered him. A girl. Maybe 6. Shaved head. Tubes in her arms. Eyes open, but hollow. She didn't react when he called out. Didn't flinch when Minjae knelt beside her. Only when Bile whispered, "Hey, you're safe now," did her fingers twitch. Taehyung's voice came through the comms. "They're here." Gunfire erupted upstairs. They had less time than they thought. Yoongi's voice was panicked. They initiated a lock. "Backup's on the way. Get what you need and get out now." Jungkook turned to Minjae. "Get the kids out. All of them. No matter what." "What about you?" she asked. "I'm going to find the core." He ran. The lab twisted into deeper corridors, rooms marked with numbers, chemicals, acronyms. He passed an incinerator still warm, and a chamber lined with VR pods pulsing with seizure-inducing light patterns. The memories clawed at him. Room 17. The walls were mirrored. Inside stood a single boy, barefoot, dressed in black. The patch on his neck glowed red. Prototype 08. Jungkook stepped forward. The boy turned. They looked at each other like time had folded. Same bone structure. Same eyes. Except 08's were empty. No fear. No anger. Just void. Jungkook spoke softly. "Do you know who you are?" Silence. "I'm not here to hurt you." Still nothing. Jungkook stepped closer. Then the boy moved faster than a human should. He struck Jungkook in the ribs, sent him flying into the glass wall. A rib cracked. Jungkook gasped, pain flashing white behind his eyes. But he didn't retaliate. "Listen to me," he said, coughing. "You're not a weapon. You're a person." The boy grabbed him by the throat. Jungkook didn't resist. He just looked into the boy's eyes. "Do you know the name JIMIN?" Something flickered. The boy's grip loosened. Barely. But it was there. A tremor. A heartbeat. "JIMIN," Jungkook said again, voice raw. "He saved me. He gave me my name back. He would have saved you too." The boy's hands began to shake. A low whimper escaped him. The first sound he had made. And then the alarms went wild. Security flooded the lab. Yoongi's scream burst through the comms. "Jungkook. They're in the system. Get out now." Jungkook pulled 08 behind him, shielding him. The guards opened fire. Taehyung arrived first, gunning 2 down with surgical precision. Bile followed, taking a round to the arm but returning twice the pain. Minjae cleared the hallway with a flashbang. They fought like wolves. When it was over, silence reigned. Jungkook stood in the middle of it, the boy behind him, clinging to his jacket. Minji's face was streaked with blood. Taehyung's knuckles were split. Yoongi's voice came again, shaken. "They tried to remote terminate the prototypes. But I severed the connection." Jungkook turned to her audio feed. "How long before they try again?" "Hours. Maybe less. We have to move them." Bile hissed through gritted teeth, clutching her wounded arm. "We can't just move 12 traumatized kids across a border." "We won't," Jungkook said. He turned to 08. "We'll expose them. Now." Minji's eyes widened. "You mean livestream it?" "Exactly." Within the hour, Yoongi had rigged a secure uplink. The footage broadcasted to public networks, hidden drones, confession logs from Han, footage of the labs, the children, the corporate memos. It was raw, unfiltered. And it spread like plague. The world exploded. Outrage. Protests. Raids on Astria facilities. The lab was secured by a neutral humanitarian coalition within 36 hours. The children were taken into protective custody under Jungkook's alias as the lead whistleblower. But none of them trusted adults. Only him. 08 wouldn't leave his side. And Jungkook didn't ask him to. He sat with him every night, holding his hand while he shook in his sleep. One night, as the stars bled through the hospital blinds, 08 finally spoke. "I don't know my name." Jungkook looked down at him. "Then, let's pick one." The boy hesitated. "Can I have yours?" Jungkook smiled. "You already do." Outside, the world raged. But inside, something impossible had happened. The system hadn't won. And Jungkook, for the first time in years, didn't feel like a ghost. He felt real. Because now, he wasn't just fighting for Jimin. He was fighting for every version of himself they tried to erase. It was quiet in the sanctuary house. A converted monastery deep in the Carpathian Mountains, protected by freezing winds and anonymous borders. Thick stone walls silenced the outside world. Beyond them, chaos reigned, nations unraveling from the inside out as the truth kept bleeding. Inside, though, only breathing could be heard. The children were asleep. Most of them. Jungkook wasn't. He sat in the hallway, back against the cold wall, holding a cracked photo of Jimin in one hand and a black notebook in the other. Pages filled with coded entries, Jimin's handwriting, messy and fast, covering thoughts never meant for anyone to read. Thoughts of fear, of failure, of him. If he remembers too much too fast, it'll kill him. What if I'm wrong about Taehyung? He says he's loyal, but I see the fractures. He smiles when Jungkook walks in. Not because he's happy, but because he's scared of how not happy he'll be if he doesn't. Jungkook couldn't breathe for a second. Footsteps approached. Yoongi stood there, hoodie half-zipped, tablet glowing in her arms. She stared down at him with eyes that had been red for days. "I didn't know he kept that," she said softly. "You knew about this place?" Jungkook asked, holding the notebook up like a relic. She nodded. Jimin set it up before his final trip to Zurich. Said if everything went to hell, the next generation would need somewhere untouched. It's the only building on Earth that doesn't exist in any digital system. Jungkook rubbed his face. He planned everything. Even his own death. "No," Yoongi said. "He planned to survive. But he planned for us to keep going if he didn't." She sat next to him, pulling her knees to her chest. "They're calling for your extradition," she said after a long silence. Jungkook closed the notebook. "Who?" "Interpol. South Korea. Even the UN, unofficially. They don't know what to do with you anymore. Some want to label you a terrorist. Others want to give you a Nobel Peace Prize." He laughed, sharp and bitter. Yoongi continued, "The files keep surfacing. Astria's backup networks are fractured, but not dead. And the lab prototypes? Not all were recovered. At least 5 are still missing. 2 may have already been activated. Meaning someone out there is using them. For war. Or worse." Jungkook leaned his head back against the stone. "I'm tired of chasing ghosts." "But you're one," Yoongi said. He looked at her. "I don't want to be." Yoongi sighed. "Then we finish it. One final cut to the root. Astria has a nerve center. Not public, not documented. But the chatter's increasing, code phrases about the return and the archivist." "Where?" he asked. "An offshore rig. Technically Russian, but it's been privately owned since before you were born. It's where they first trialed Project Aletheus Alpha Phase. The final backup of Mnemosyne is rumored to be there. Your full file. Everything they ever programmed into you. Your real past." Jungkook stood slowly. "What do we need?" Yoongi handed him a single flash drive. "Just this." He looked at it. "What's on it?" "A countervirus. Jimin made it before he died. He figured out how to disrupt Mnemosyne's neural thread code. If uploaded to the rig's mainframe, it'll wipe every remaining trace of the program. Forever. Like it never existed." He clenched the drive in his fist. "And if I plug it in?" "You won't remember any of this," she said. "Not the pain. Not Jimin. Not the children. Not what they did to you. It'll be like it never happened." He went cold. "You're telling me I have to choose between killing the machine or keeping my memory of the only person I've ever loved?" Yoongi didn't answer. She didn't have to. The journey to the rig took 4 days. Boat. Helicopter. Stealth sub. They moved like phantoms again. The original crew stayed behind with the children. Only Taehyung, File, Yoongi, and Minjae came. The rig emerged from the sea like a steel leviathan, 20 stories tall, armored, and humming with artificial life. Drones watched the skies. Heat sensors scanned the water. Bile neutralized the first tower with a silent bullet. Minjae hacked the base entry port with a smile so tight it looked like it hurt. Jungkook moved like someone with nothing left to lose. Inside, the corridors pulsed red. The walls buzzed with static. Everything smelled of electricity and something far older, oil and blood. They split up. Taehyung and Yeonji went to find the server room. Minjae secured the armory. Bile watched the exit. Jungkook went deeper, floor by floor, until he reached it. A door marked with his own face. He stepped in. The room was sterile. At its center, a chair. Wires. Needles. A screen. And in front of it all, Han Seojin, alive, strapped to a chair, barely conscious. Blood caked her forehead. A monitor displayed vital signs. Jungkook didn't understand. She opened one eye. "You're late," she croaked. "What is this?" he demanded. Her lip bled as she smiled. "A gift. From Estria. You made too much noise. So they left me here. A message. Kill your creator. Or become her." He walked toward her slowly. The flash drive burned in his pocket. "They're gone." "No," she whispered. "They're watching. They want to see what you choose." He stood over her. "Why me?" She laughed softly. "Because you were the only one who worked. The only one who survived all of it. You're proof it can be done." He took the drive from his pocket. Held it. It glowed blue. "You know what this is?" She nodded. "If you plug it in, they'll die. But so will your truth." He stared at her. "You don't get to talk about truth." "No," she said. "But I built yours. And now you can burn it down." Taehyung's voice came through the comms. "We're in. Ready when you are." Jungkook walked to the server port. Han began to cry. It surprised him. "I thought I was doing the right thing," she whispered. "I think everyone who hurts people tells themselves that," he said. He lifted the drive. Paused. Then spoke into the comms. "If I don't come back, tell Yeonji to take care of the boy." Taehyung's voice cracked. "Jungkook." He inserted the drive. The room went black. Then blue. Then white. Data rushed through the screens. Jungkook screamed once, sharply, and then collapsed. He woke up days later. Somewhere warm. Familiar voices outside the room. Yeonji. Bile. Laughter. He sat up slowly. Didn't recognize his hands. Didn't remember the room. Then the door opened. A boy entered. Wide eyes. Black hair. Clutching a small notebook. "Hi," he said. "I'm Minuk. You saved me." Jungkook looked at him, lost. "I did." The boy nodded. "You're my brother." Jungkook's mouth opened. But nothing came. The boy smiled. "It's okay. I'll remind you." And he sat beside him. Outside, the world was different. Not healed, but bleeding less. And somewhere, even without memory, Jungkook felt that Jimin had kept his final promise. Some things you don't survive. You just make sure someone else does. Do you know what it feels like to remember a face, but not the name that made it matter? Jungkook whispered the question without knowing who he was asking. The boy Minuk was asleep beside him, fingers curled around a notebook that Jungkook had flipped through twice, 3 times, maybe more. None of the words were his, yet his own voice echoed off each page. It wasn't memory. Not exactly. It was something more cruel. An outline. A shadow of emotion with no source. A sense of ache without the wound. The monastery remained a quiet storm of healing and vigilance. Outside, Taehyung had taken up regular patrol. Yeonji sat surrounded by cables and code. Bile had fortified every doorway. Minjae, ever alert, had switched from guns to stories, reading to the younger children when the air grew too thick with silence. And Jungkook, Minuk now, technically floated through it all like a borrowed ghost. Everyone addressed him with familiarity. Every room felt like it should carry a memory. But it was like trying to hear through glass. The events were there, echoes in others' voices, documented in footage, in scars on his own body, but none of it lived behind his eyes. He stepped outside before dawn, walking barefoot on stone until the chill bit into his toes. Taehyung sat at the edge of the cliff, a rifle across his lap, cigarette between his lips, half-burned and forgotten. "You don't sleep much," Jungkook said. Taehyung didn't turn around. "Neither do you." Jungkook stepped closer. "You used to know me. The real me, right?" Taehyung hesitated. "Depends what you mean by real. The one before they built me into a weapon. Before the programming. Before the erasure." Taehyung looked over the horizon. "I knew the version that loved a boy who smiled too little and carried too much. That version was reckless. Brilliant. Dangerous. Did he hate you?" A long pause. "He didn't trust me. But he didn't hate me either. He pitied me. And that's worse." "Why?" "Because he saw through me. Saw the fear I pretended was control. The loyalty I wrapped in logic." Jungkook sat beside him. "You could have killed me. 12 times. I tried," Taehyung said. "Every time I held back information. Every time I delayed an order. Every time I told myself you'd survive anyway. That's how people like me kill. We hesitate at the wrong moment." Jungkook nodded slowly. "And Jimin?" Taehyung's voice changed. "He loved you like it was the last good thing he had. And when he died, we all learned what it costs to love something more than you fear the world." Jungkook stood. "Do you want me to remember him?" he asked. Taehyung looked up at him finally. "No," he said. "I want you to become someone who doesn't need to." That day, the first drone arrived. No insignia. No country. Just a message. Return what was stolen. Or the next child dies. Yoongi dissected the tech within minutes. The drone had been retrofitted with both camera and injection module, capable of sedating a full-grown adult in 3 seconds. Stealth. Targeted. "They're escalating," Min-jae said. "They don't care about optics anymore. Astria wants their ghosts back." "But we destroyed Mnemosyne," Bile snapped. "No," Jungkook murmured. "We destroyed the files. Not the people." Yoongi confirmed it the next morning. Astria's remaining cells are now using a derivative of Mnemosyne called Echo Bloom. It's not full reprogramming. It's suggestion. Layered into dreams. Environmental triggers. They're seeding it through airwaves, through music, even children's storybooks. Taehyung said it first. "They're not rewriting soldiers. They're rewriting generations." Jungkook's fists clenched. "How do we stop that?" Yoongi turned the tablet toward him. "By finding the archive of the forgotten." None of them had heard of it. But Yoongi explained. Jimin uncovered fragments. Not stored data. Encoded people. Subjects who failed Mnemosyne but weren't killed. Instead, they were archived. Stored in a biosuspended state. Their minds holding keys, neural patterns, access phrases, even memories of the original architects. But their bodies were discarded. Abandoned in off-grid facilities. Hidden by Astria in places they thought no one would look. Taehyung paled. "You're saying there are people out there alive, but frozen?" "Yes," Yoongi said. "And one of them was the original test subject. Before you." Jungkook stepped back. "Before me?" "Codename Lazarus." Min-jae tapped the monitor. "We found one possible location. Mongolia. A former Soviet neuroresearch site turned private black site in the 90s. Unlisted. No power grid. Satellite blind spot. Remote enough to bury sins," Bile said. "And guarded," Yoongi added. "This isn't a rescue mission. It's a warpath." They left that night. The monastery held its breath as the 4 of them boarded the van, leaving Taehyung behind to protect the children. He didn't fight it. Jungkook was the storm now. And Taehyung, for once, understood he couldn't walk into the fire and not be consumed. The road to Mongolia was long and wordless. Jungkook stared out the window, his mind an echo chamber. He didn't want his memories back anymore. He wanted the ones they tried to hide. The Lazarus facility sat beneath a mountain, buried like a wound. Snowdrifts howled through the trees. They infiltrated quietly. No explosives. No drama. The first body was found in a room with glass walls and no oxygen. A woman. Late 30s. Preserved in a cryogenic tank. Wires trailing from her skull. Min-jae scanned her ID tag. Subject, K0-1. Neural index, 84%. Status, inactive. Memory potential, hostile. More followed. Men. Women. Even a child, barely 10. Dozens of them. All frozen. All silenced. Then they found him. Lazarus. Tank 7B. Male. Early 20s. Lacerations across the chest. Brain activity low, but spiking. Jungkook stared at the face. He didn't recognize it. And yet, his hands trembled. He felt a pull. Deep. Primal. Wake him, he said. Bile hesitated. He could be dangerous. We all are, Jungkook said. But he has answers. Yeonji triggered the thaw sequence. Steam hissed. Metal groaned. Lazarus's eyes opened. He didn't scream. He smiled. Welcome back, Lazarus said. You took your time. Do you know me? Jungkook asked. Lazarus nodded. I was your prototype. But JIMIN. JIMIN was your maker. Jungkook blinked. You knew him? I loved him, Lazarus said, voice cracking. And he erased me to save you. Silence stretched. I don't remember anything, Jungkook whispered. Lazarus looked into him. You don't need to. The love we lost is still in you. That's why Astria fears you. You don't just survive programming. You defy it. Jungkook fell to his knees. He felt the scream in his chest, but it wouldn't come out. Not yet. Lazarus placed a hand on his shoulder. There's one final archive. Not data. Not minds. But truth. JIMIN stored it in me. A story too dangerous to record anywhere else. What story? The origin, Lazarus said. Of Mnemosyne. Of Astria. Of you. And of the man who made it all possible. Jungkook stared. My father. Lazarus shook his head. No. Mine. Jungkook stood slowly, cold flooding his spine. Who is he? Lazarus looked at him. And whispered. JIMIN's first mistake. Outside, the wind screamed. Inside, Jungkook's heart shattered. Again. The wind outside the Lazarus facility howled with a voice almost human, moaning like it was morning. Inside, the air stood still, so dense with electricity and unsaid things that breathing felt like inhaling secrets. Jungkook stared at the man in front of him, skin still pale from cryosuspension, eyes too knowing for someone who had been in stasis for almost 2 decades. Jungkook had faced murderers, ghosts, prototypes, corrupted architects of entire systems, but nothing had ever shaken him like this man, this first one. You're saying JIMIN made a mistake, Jungkook said, voice raw, stretched. Lazarus, his voice calm, low, bearing the weight of a long-forgotten sermon, nodded. Yes, he chose me first. Before you. I was the first subject. The first to survive Mnemosyne's initial integration. But I wasn't what he hoped I would be. Jungkook stepped back, fists clenched, breath steaming in the cold air. You're talking in riddles. Just say what the hell you are. I'm what you could have been, Lazarus said. If JIMIN hadn't fallen in love with you. Yeonji, standing in the doorway, flinched at the admission. Bile gripped her sidearm tighter. Lazarus didn't stop. His eyes locked on Jungkook's like a mirror threatening to crack. JIMIN didn't just rewrite you. He chose you. He saw what I was becoming, what Mnemosyne was doing to my mind, how I stopped dreaming, stopped fearing, stopped feeling. And he panicked. He halted the project, rebooted it, and stole you from the system. You weren't just another trial, Jungkook. You were his confession. His second chance. His redemption. Jungkook's throat closed. The room seemed to tilt slightly under the weight of the words. I don't remember him, he said. Lazarus stepped forward. But I do. I remember everything. The way he whispered your name in his sleep after we thought you were lost. The way he would cry over your blood work, afraid they'd altered too much of you. The way he chose to erase his ties to me, erase me, just to give you one more breath. You're lying, Jungkook growled. Lazarus shook his head. You were always going to kill me. He knew that. That's why he buried me. Because even in the smallest chance I lived, you and I could not exist in the same world. Yeonji finally stepped between them. That's enough. Lazarus looked at her with something like pity. You were the coder. The one who laughed like nothing in the world scared you. I remember you. I don't care, Yeonji said, voice steel. Minjae entered, holding a torn map. There's something else. In one of the cryologs. Coordinates. Not here. Not even in this country. It's labeled House of the Architect. Vile's face darkened. There were always rumors about the real origin of mnemosony. Not the labs. The man who seeded the idea. The man who disappeared before the project got traction. Jungkook looked back at Lazarus. Your father. Lazarus nodded. The man who taught JIMIN how to break minds. Before JIMIN betrayed him. What's his name? Jungkook asked. Lazarus's eyes gleamed. He has no name anymore. Just a designation. Ares. The Warfather. Yoongi paled. Ares was a myth. A metaphor. There was never a single person. There was, Lazarus said. And he's waiting. He built Astria, mnemosony, Aletheia. Not as tools, but as art. Bile muttered, we're not ready for this. Minjae passed the coordinates to Jungkook. Siberia. An old intelligence estate, buried beneath snow and satellite silence. No signals in. No signals out. Last flight out of Ulanyud leaves in 5 hours. Jungkook looked at them, at Lazarus, at the half-awake children on the cryologs, and said nothing. Then he turned. We're going. The flight was cold. The air inside the cargo plane hummed with turbulence and unspoken fears. Jungkook sat alone at the back, staring at the walls like they could provide answers. Every part of him felt wired wrong, memory gone, identity severed, but emotion too present, boiling in his chest. He didn't know who he was, but he knew what he wanted. To end it. To end everything that had turned him into a story written by others. Bile sat beside him after an hour. She didn't speak for a long time. Then, finally, you don't have to do this alone. I do, he said. Why? Because if I don't, then everything JIMIN gave his life for, everything he tried to save me from, means nothing. You think this Ares is still alive? She asked. I think the devil never dies. He just changes faces. The estate was visible from the edge of the mountain range. A black complex surrounded by ice fields and mine-laced trails. No guards. No dogs. No lights. Nothing. That's what terrified them most. Yoongi rigged satellite jammers. Minjae planted fallback beacons. Bile handed Jungkook a pistol, but he refused it. No more guns, he said. I don't want to kill another person unless I have to. The front doors were already unlocked. Inside was a museum of silence. Marble halls. Books that looked untouched. Dust on every surface except one, the piano. Someone was playing. Faintly. A melody Jungkook couldn't place, but his lungs seized at the sound. It echoed through his bones. They followed it. Down. Deeper. Past empty dining rooms. Surgical theaters. War rooms lined with aged monitors and flickering VHS tapes. Until they found him. A man. 80, maybe older. Eyes sharp. Spine like iron. Standing in a greenhouse built beneath the earth, tending to a single crimson flower. You made it, he said without looking up. Who are you? Jungkook asked. The man turned. You already know. You're Ares. Once, he nodded. Now I'm just the last truth. Bile raised her weapon. The man didn't flinch. I suppose Lazarus warned you. He was always more faithful than smart. Minjae stepped forward. Why? Why build all of this? Because people forget, Ares said. They forget that peace is a fragile illusion. That memory is what shapes obedience. I didn't want to control the world. I wanted to teach it. And the only way to do that is to erase its comforts. Jungkook approached. You built mnemosony. Yes, but I did not build you. That was JIMIN's defiance. His act of rebellion. His failure. Jungkook's hands shook. Why him? Ares smiled. Because he was the brightest. He saw the machine and thought he could make it love. He thought he could tame fire. But you. He pointed a finger. You were fire. You just don't remember how to burn. Jungkook lunged. Bile tried to stop him. But it was too late. He grabbed the old man by the collar, slammed him against the glass. You turned children into test subjects. You turned me into a lie. No, Ares whispered. You were always a weapon. JIMIN just tried to name you something else. Jungkook raised his fist. paused, and then stepped back. "No more violence," he said. "That's your legacy." "Not mine." Aries laughed, blood trickling from his mouth. "Then what will you do? Kill me with mercy?" "No," Jungkook said. "I'm going to let the world see you. All of you." Yoongi activated her feed. Cameras lit the room. Aries looked around. "For what it's worth," he said, "you're better than I thought." Jungkook turned his back. That night, every screen on Earth showed a face no one recognized, but everyone feared. The man behind a generation of missing children, fabricated wars, altered memories. And the boy who stood before him, unbroken. 2 weeks later, Jungkook walked alone into the old monastery. The children had been relocated to international care networks. The team had dispersed to safer zones. Lazarus had vanished. Only the boy Minuk remained. Jungkook found him sitting in the library, drawing. "What's that?" he asked. Minuk turned the paper. A sketch of 2 boys. One smiling, one crying. "That's you," Minuk said. "And that's the one you forgot." Jungkook knelt. "I think I'm ready to remember now." The boy smiled. "I think he's already in you." And for the first time in a long time, Jungkook felt whole.